Do you oftentimes find yourself scratching your head, puzzled over this absolute cluster F that life is? Well, you're in luck because today's episode, we're going to be talking about why life is fucked up or fucked or anything like that. This is the Existential Stoic podcast. I'm Randy. That's Danny. What's going on, Danny?
What's up, Randy?
Danny, is it just me or do things seem to get crazier by the day?
You know what's funny? Sometimes I think it's like, like when you were young and like your parents would say something, you'd be like, they're just old. They don't understand? And like,
Yeah.
and I know everybody says it, everybody like sees it happening to themselves, you know what I mean? And like, I do wonder sometimes, like, is it just that I'm old and I don't understand things anymore? Or they just, because like, I feel like so many times, like, I just don't understand anything happening around me. Do you know what I
Mhm.
mean? Like the world it just seems like absurd that we do things the way we do them. Like completely
Dude,
absurd.
this is the second time today I've actually had this conversation that I'm turning into a grumpy old man because I'm like, what is wrong with the world?
But
Yeah.
it amazes me too, because it's like so many things, just like to give you like, I mean, I guess like a kind of a glaring like example was like, dude, when COVID happened and they did the shutdown around the world, like I remember reading like there was a city in India where for the first time in 30 years they could see the mountains that were there because the smog had gone away. And I was like, that blew my mind because I was like, you could have been 29 years old and had never knew those mountains were there if you never left that city. And it's like, and what did we do? We just got right back to the same old thing, and now everything's polluted again. It's like the smog's there. And it's like, so how come we don't fix things ever? You know what I mean? Like, this is what kills me
Mhm.
sometimes. Or like, I see people so miserable, and it's like, well, change something. But it's like, nothing seems to happen. It just makes you feel like you're taking crazy pills,
Well,
you
it
know?
seems like nobody cares. Like this
Yeah.
this gets me all the time. Where like, people just leave like people who freaking spit gum in a urinal or like, they just leave trash behind. And it's just like, your mom isn't coming to clean up after you everywhere you
But
go.
then
And
they'll
I'm
be
just
the
like,
first people to jump online and be like, gotta keep the community clean, guys.
thoughts and prayers.
Thoughts and prayers.
Because I
Yeah.
think maybe they're so I don't know, or maybe I'm just like I always come back to that thing from the Tao Te Ching, like the the good man is the bad man's teacher, and the bad man is the good man's job, and it's like this is the great secret. Like if you don't understand, so and I was thinking about that the other day. I was like, either so essentially that means like either in life you're a teacher or you're a student, and so
Or you're both. It could be about the
yeah.
individual too. It could
Well,
be
yeah.
that you're both your teacher when you're the good person, and you're both like your burden when you're the bad person, essentially.
Well, okay. So I think, like always, we're going to be both students and teachers, but we've come to this cross in the roads with political correctness and everybody scared about saying that something's going to offend everybody, that nobody actually teaches anyone except for these BS gurus that sell that like, sniff their own farts. So like, but like the thing is nobody gets any real life feedback. So they just don't know how to improve.
Yeah, I do wonder that sometimes because when that's pendulum, they always say like social change. I've heard this and it seems right to me. It's like a pendulum, right? You always overcorrect way too much before you get to that center again. And you can see that
I
happen.
hope we've already hit that overcorrect point because things are about as
Can't
crazy
imagine.
as yeah.
No, but it does. It makes you feel crazy. And I also think I've noticed that like it's funny in the last like 6 years, like in my philosophy classes, dude, the amount of times like people will no longer like they won't argue with each other because they're afraid of expressing a different opinion. And it's like
Mhm.
that's not good though, because that's not critical thinking. It's also just not like that's not how you learn by expressing your opinions, arguing with others, sometimes getting knocked down, but you learn from that if you're open-minded. And it also teaches you to be open-minded. When you don't share views unless they are agreeable, then we have not, but there's no dialogue, It's crazy.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting to watch TV shows from a while ago because I was just watching Arrested Development again recently, and the stuff they say in there, like literally the first phrase from the show was "Look at what the gays did to me." Like that
Yeah,
was the first speech in the show.
yeah.
And there's so much other stuff that like would
It's not
never
even that
fly today.
old.
Yeah, that's 20 years old. And then like you look back at something like Columbo or one of these game
Oh
shows
God.
from that era, and like the stuff that they would say is just crazy. And like, yeah, great. It shows us that we're advanced, we're woke. But like woke is just causing a whole bunch of problems where everybody's just afraid to say everything anything, and there's just tons of blatant animosity between people that just can't be resolved.
Well, that's the problem, I think, is like I've always found this is always the catch 22 with it, right? Is like you want people to treat each other decently and better and not be assholes, which means you have to correct a lot of that systemic problems that exist in the institution or the system. But then when you just police things like that, you don't give people a chance to change or to realize why things should be different or anything. And instead you get an opposite angry response, I think, to it that makes it worse and makes people instead of actually helping people like open their mind, open their eyes, they dig down and they're like, no, I'm not moving, And I think it makes
Dude,
it worse. Like,
like I mean, I like racism has palpably gotten a lot worse since all this
oh my God,
anti-racism stuff.
dude. Oh my
Like
God.
ever since
And
it
it's
became an
sad.
issue, it's gotten so much incredibly worse that like
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well,
It
it's
doesn't
because
feel
people
like
dig in.
progress.
It doesn't because people dig in. And then, and also I think the media doesn't help either, though, because they love fanning the front flames because it gets everybody worked up. Everybody stays engaged watching because, they're pissed off. But I think this is it. I think we use anger to sell so much stuff and to keep people engaged. And I think that's also toxic. It's destroying our system, dude. Like,
Hmm.
it hasn't helped anything. And it's a shame because, like, you know, I don't know. It's like, I would love to have good conversations with people, and I feel like you can't. I mean, like people don't like. It's so hard to find people to talk about like have actual conversations with about real things. Like I think it's very
Hmm.
difficult anymore because you either get attacked or and it's like and this idea that like if you don't agree with everything I said, you're attacking me or you're wrong. It's like what? Like where's
Yeah, and plus you have the whole internet mob that comes after you too.
I
How
know.
like it used to be like you said something embarrassing or wrong, and a week goes by and people would generally forget it. But nowadays it's like persistent forever online and yada yada yada. And
Well, that's the other thing. And I think that's the other thing. When it used to go away, people could also grow from it. But
hmm
when it's there forever and people keep bringing it up and dredging up, you force people into a corner of fighting rather than growing or changing. You know what I mean? Because it's like, well, you're going
hmm
to attack me, so like, what the hell? And I think yeah, we're in this situation where like things are not getting better. They're getting, actually weird. I feel like, and this could have just been misperception too on my part, but like when we were in high school, which is like, over 20 years ago, I feel like things were actually better than they are now in terms of like acceptance and stuff like
Well, dude,
that. But
that was like the very end of the golden years. Because like they in French
yeah.
they called them the 30 glorious years, which was the 60s, the 70s, no, 50s, 60s, 70s. And then 80s was when things all of a sudden went south, like cocaine and
Yeah, well,
MBAs and all
and
that
yeah,
stuff.
and
Yeah.
greed
And so
like went
things started going
skyrocketed.
south really fast, but it took a while. So like we were basically until the dot com bubble was like the end of the era. So essentially, people were scared that like the big like dot com bubble or no, what was that computer thing?
It was dot
Where
com.
they
That was
thought
dot
of
com.
computer. Well,
Oh,
no,
oh,
but they
you're
thought
talking about
when the new year came,
yeah,
the
yeah,
year
yeah, you're talking about
2000,
Y2K. Yeah, that was. I
Y2K.
remember.
So that
I went to a
essentially
party
was
for
the
that.
beginning of the end.
Yeah, yeah.
That essentially was because ever since then it's been a slow downhill.
Well, and yeah, and you look at what's happened since then too. I mean, this is like, because right in 2001 you had the 9/11 thing, which then that
Mhm.
led to a whole slew of racism and like, search and seizure and all kinds of messed up laws and stuff. And it's just been getting,
Yeah.
and I think every time I feel like we're gonna get something better, like we have a financial crisis, and then everybody panics again. And it's like, but I think this is
Hmm.
it, right? We live, and that's why I feel crazy so often though. It's like, because like instead of just like talking about these things, people like have to pick sides and they have to get like so angry. And I'm like, but we're not like, how can we have anything if we don't talk about it and like
Well,
figure
it's
this
really
out?
interesting because it reminds me of what they how they taught us to think of diabetes when I was learning in vet school. they called it starvation in the face of excess. And that sounds
Huh.
almost exactly like what we have because
Yeah.
we literally are living in a world of excess. Like we have abundant food. Just look at everyone who's like 400 pounds overweight. We have like abundant everything, things, things to take care of your attention, everything. Just like this crazy abundance. And yet we're all just starving for any type of basic connection, any type of feeling good. It's like we're literally just living in a diabetic world. So we need insulin. That's the
Maybe that
answer.
is, you know, more Ozempics. Maybe
Well,
that's why,
yeah.
or whatever the hell
Hmm.
it's called, that they've been using for weight loss and stuff. Have you seen that? Dude, it's insane.
Mm.
Maybe,
Ozempic, but
yeah.
it's really bad. So
Yeah,
it's
it's
good.
terrible
It's good
for
in the
you.
short term, but it destroys your muscle tissue. So it's like in the long term, it's going to be the worst thing ever because
Yeah.
uh
There's gonna be a
they
shitload of
there's
lawsuits. And you're
well, yeah,
stuck on it when you take it, dude. Once there are people on it, they're stuck. But it's like, but this it's also these simple fixes. That's the insulin part I think we're talking about too. It's like
yeah.
you want simple fixes, not work. And I think this is
Hmm.
the other, we learn from all these philosophies that like any change takes effort and work and time. It's a journey. It's not immediate. But we're so fixed on the quick fix, like immediate change now that we don't,
Yeah.
sorry.
I'm glad you brought that up because that's something that over the past like 5 years, I've definitely noticed a change in my own mentality is like just not caring about the quick fixes. Like,
Yeah.
for instance, I'm training for this like running type event. And so I'm training with a few other people, and every time we go out, they want to go like super hard and they're like exhausted and they're like, let's just go harder and harder and harder. And I'm like, we still have abundant time to train before the event. There's
Yeah.
no reason to go hard. The only possible thing that could come from going hard is one of us gets injured and then we're just out. So
Yeah. And
like,
then you
but
can't do
like,
it. Like,
yeah, but it's like you start to see that like slow and steady wins the race. Like how we both changed careers, it took a long time. It took like
yeah.
years and years and years. But looking back on it, you can see that it was slow, steady progress, and that actually works.
Yeah, in your mind, you want it to be like in your mind, you want to make the decision and be like, I'm switching careers, boom, career switch, I'm done. Like the next day, right?
Hmm.
You want it to be like that, but the reality is like you have to get comfortable with it. You have to figure out what's right. You have to learn the skills. I think that's one of the things I've always loved about philosophy. Is like all these philosophers I really admire, like, from all throughout time, like one of the things they all prove is like it takes a lifetime to like become wise and and you're never gonna reach those ideals. Like they're not reachable. And I think it also shows you how like everything in our world is a construct that's made up and like don't take it so seriously, but keep working towards the future and like it will change, and I think it shows you how much your own effort can do, but also the time required. And I think we just have gotten so we're so overloaded with stuff and so just like and I think that's the problem with like this whole PC thing you're talking about too, is like people expect people to just instantly change. And it's like that's not gonna happen, dude. It's gonna take time. It takes conversations, it takes effort. You're not going to convince everybody, but doing it the way we're doing it, it's just causing people to dig in and make it worse. And it's like,
Hmm.
you know,
Yeah.
yeah,
So I think we just solved the world with that one, huh?
we did. And that's the worst part. It's so simple.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, if you enjoyed that, you can check out the rest of our episodes. As a matter of fact, at the end of this, probably somewhere down here on YouTube, it'll tell you a couple videos that would be recommended for you. But other things you could do is leave us a positive review, a glowing review, so they say. This is the Existential Stoic Podcast. I'm Randy. That's Danny. I'll see you later, Danny.
Later, Andy.